This is another video in my Instant Pot series, but you don't need the Duo Crisp for this one. So this is suitable actually for any electric pressure cooker, and cooking a wonderful bolognese sauce as a batch cook is so easy in the Instant Pot. And today I'm going to be using about 800 grams of minced beef to make this bolognese, and that usually gives us about 8 greedy portions of bolognese to go on our pasta. But by adding this secret ingredient, we can make that last much longer and get it up to 11.5, 12 portions if you're not as greedy as us, and get some of those into the freezer so that you've got lots of food all ready and waiting to go. Okay, so here's what we're going to use for our ragu lentil bolognese, and what we've got, of course, is our mince. So I'm cooking a double portion here, and that's about 800 grams of minced beef. And then I'm going to be having that kind of classic mirepoix. So we've got some onions, and we've got some celery, and then this would normally be 2 carrots, but this is a huge purple carrot, which I wish I'd grown, but I haven't. Let me just show you this. Look at the colour of that, looks like a beet. Absolutely amazing. So this is a purple carrot from my vegetable box. And then we have some rosemary, fresh from the garden in my case, but you can use dried herbs instead, and some garlic. Normally this would be a couple of cloves, but I've got more because this is from a tiny bulb of garlic from the garden. And then we've got some tinned tomatoes. I tend to use tinned tomatoes, just a bit cheaper than passata, and I'm quite happy with them. Some good quality tomato puree and some wine, which you don't have to use, but it really does add something. And then there'll be some water. And then to make this dish super frugal, as well as using a cheap cut of meat like mince, and as well as cooking a double batch in a pressure cooker, which is a really cheap way to cook, but to make it super frugal, I am also adding some French lentils, puree lentils, and they go really well with the mince. And if you have people in the family, as I do, who don't really like kind of full-on lentil-based dishes, this is a great way of adding in some nourishment, reducing the cost, reducing the meat amount that you're eating, more sustainable, and barely noticeable actually, because the lentils retain their texture, so they just sort of blend in with the mince. And if Mr. Growing Frugal will eat them, then most people will. So I think this is a really delicious way of making bolognese, and a great use of the Instant Pot, because of course the lentils cook down very quickly in there. So then we'll have some olive oil and some seasoning as we go along, and then we'll also add some red wine vinegar, either as a deglaze, and see my previous video if you want to know about deglazing the Instant Pot. So I'll put a link to that one there, but either use it as a deglaze or I'll use it at the end as part of flavouring. So that's our ingredients. So let's get them prepared and into the Instant Pot. Okay, that's all of our veg chopped, so let's get those into the Instant Pot. Okay, so let's start by getting the Instant Pot onto sauté, and I'm going to add the olive oil, and I'm going to let that just heat up for a minute. Okay, so let's test that oil. Yeah, it's ready to go. So let's get our onions, carrots and celery into the Instant Pot, and we're going to just sauté those until they're just starting to go translucent. And what we want to do is keep stirring and pay close attention to this bit. So many times with the Instant Pot you can just leave it, but this first stage is pretty crucial. So normally this would be orange carrots, of course. Doesn't it look amazing? It looks a bit Christmassy. And if it starts sticking, you can add a bit more oil, or you can turn the Instant Pot sauté down onto low, so it has more than one setting on sauté. I find it a little bit too low often. I quite like something in the middle. Mostly I use high, and just keep stirring and pay close attention. Okay, so I'm just now gonna add in the herbs and the garlic. Give those a bit of a stir around. And this is lovely fresh rosemary. You could use sage, thyme. Good to have a quite hardy herb for this part of the recipe at least. If you like a bit of basil at the end, that's fine. But it will just disappear if you put it in at this stage. Okay, so now I've pushed all of the vegetables to one side and I'm going to just add a little bit more oil. And now I'm going to add in the mince. And what I'm doing is just pressing down on the mince, leaving the vegetables to one side, and getting that mince down into a flat layer. I'm using a spatula, one of my favourite kitchen tools. I did a video a while ago on my favourite utensils in the kitchen, and these spatulas featured highly in it. They're fantastic. So what I've done there is press down on the meat so that it's kind of formed a bit of a seal on the bottom of the pan. And I've got all the vegetables off to one side here. What this is doing is allowing the mince to brown a little before it sort of releases all of its water. Right, we'll just let the mince fry there for a moment. Can you hear that? And while that's doing, I'm just going to season the mince a little. Just checking the veg to make sure they're not sticking. Oh, they're fine. Okay, so now I'm going to start breaking up the meat and letting the rest of it get cooked and browned here in the pan. So we're still on sauté high. Make sure that's all browned off before we go to the next stage. So now you can see that this is all brown now, although everything's purple from the purple carrots. So now I'm going to stir in the especially frugal and healthy ingredient, which is the puree lentils. So once the meat's all browned, add in the French lentils, puree lentils. So cheap, dry, these kinds of lentils. And when you've got a pressure cooker, there's really no need to be buying canned lentils and beans, and you'll be amazed how cheap dried pulses are. And they last such a long time in the store cupboard, so they're a great thing to have in. So I've let the lentils go in and just soak up a bit of that flavour and oil. I'm going to add the wine. In it goes. This is a Cab Sauvignon that was on offer. So I don't like to use super cheap wine because if it's vinegary, it really spoils your food. So I'll just buy something that's on offer that's a decent-ish wine. Instant Pot is still on sauté high. And now we're going to let this wine really get into the mince and into the lentils. So we're going to boil it away completely. So this has been boiling away and now the wine is pretty much dissolved. If you've got burnt bits, just take a bit of vinegar and deglaze the pan before you do the next stage. And then when you're ready, we're going to add in our tomatoes. I'm just using plum tomatoes. I just chop them up a bit with the wooden spoon. Same again. Then I've got, I think it's about 300 mils of water. So I'm just going to fill the tomato cans, all of that lovely juice out of the cans. Okay, so general principle for pressure cooking is to reduce the liquid down by about 1/3. There we go. I'm going to add in the bay leaf I've just brought in from the garden. Turn off the sauté now. The tomato puree is not going in yet. Tomato puree in an Instant Pot can often cause this burn function to go off, I've found. So I won't use that until the end. So all I need to do now is to add my pressure cooker lid, and if you're using the Instant Pot Duo, this might be called manual high. I'm going to give this about 15 minutes to get the lentils nicely cooked and the meat and flavours all blended in, and then I'm just going to let it slow release so I can go off now and do my other stuff and tidy up this messy kitchen and just let the Instant Pot do its thing. Okay, so the Instant Pot has been on slow release, so that's now been passive cooking for the last 26 minutes while I've been off getting the rest of the dinner ready. So now I'm going to get the lid off and give it a taste, get the tomato puree in and see where we're up to. Okay, so first of all I'm going to let any remaining steam out. Oh, and in fact it had just dropped as I was doing that, so this is ready now. Taking the lid off, trying not to let the steam go up. Ooh, lovely. So that's worked out really well. So all I need to do now is I'm going to add some tomato puree. Just give it that extra little boost of tomato at the end. That's just a quick stir in. And then if you can see that garlic there, I'll just squish that against the sides. And then that stirs through. And oh, that is looking good. So we're just going to check the seasoning, and I'll take out the herbs. There's the bay leaf. If you've used rosemary, just fish out the stalk. The leaves are absolutely fine. And that is beautiful, actually. That's a great texture. So let's have a taste. A little bit more seasoning, and then I'm going to add just a little bit of red wine and vinegar at the end. That is now perfect. So let me show you the texture and the lentils. This is a great way of upping your vegetable intake with a pulse. We've got the puree lentils in there. Hopefully you can see they've kept their shape, but actually they just mould into the bolognese really well, and they are amazing. So puree lentils, I think, are the best lentil for making a totally vegan or veggie bolognese, or just up your vegetable intake and reduce the cost of lovely ragu bolognese like this by adding in some lentils, as I have here. So all there is to do now is to wait for the linguine, get our broccoli on, and we are ready for Friday night supper. So that worked really well. So for those of you who are new to Instant Pot cooking, I hope that gives you a little sense of how you can translate some of your traditional recipes and make them in the Instant Pot instead. And if you master some of these basic concepts and ideas, cooking in the Instant Pot becomes a whole lot more creative, and we don't have to worry about those preset buttons. We can get any Instant Pot we like and know that we can make it sing. So I'll be back next week with another video, so do subscribe if you haven't already, and remember to press that little bell so you'll get a notification next time I upload. And I'll see you next time.